Hello, this is Matt Heisinga, Douglas wildlife biologist with the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. Today I'll be talking about the proposed 2024 hunting seasons in the Douglas and Lusk area. To save people a little time, this slide goes over which hunt areas that this presentation will cover. So for pronghorn, we'll cover areas 9, 11, 25, 26, 27, 29, 30, and 103. Deer will cover area 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 22, 65, and regions B, J, and T. For elk, we'll cover areas 3, 7, 113, 122, 126, and region E. So to start off, I'll give a pretty quick rundown of our season setting process and how things work. Throughout the year, we're collecting data both on populations and harvest. So we have our classification surveys that we complete throughout the year, also our abundance surveys. We also have hunter field checks during the season, and then we give the harvest surveys that are sent out in email and mail. Once we get all that information together, we put our season proposals together with our season dates and license quotas. Once that's in place, it goes to a regional review, then to a department review at a statewide level. Once those are all approved, those draft regulations are put out for public comment. We also host public meetings. We will have one in Lusk, March 19th at 6 p.m. in the Niobrara County Fairgrounds Shooting Sports Building, and then another meeting in Douglas the following night, March 20th at 6 p.m., Converse County Library Meeting Room in Douglas. But the public comment period, it's a pretty short time frame, so comments must be received by 5 o'clock, March 29th. And there's a couple of different ways you can put those comments in. I'll go over that at the end of the presentation. Once we get all those comments, we read through every comment that comes in. We do a regional analysis of all the comments, see if we need to change any of our proposals. Once that's finalized, it will go to the commission in April, and our Game and Fish Commission will approve all of our seasons and make any changes at that point. That commission meeting is April 16th and 17th in Riverton. One of the changes you'll see in our general hunting regulation is the issuance of deer, antelope, and elk licenses. There is a change for elk licenses available. After the leftover drawing, any person may apply for and receive an unlimited number of Type 8 reduced price cow-calf elk licenses. You'll see some of those Type 8 licenses later on in this presentation. I'll start out with the North Converse pronghorn herd. The North Converse pronghorn herd unit covers hunt areas 25 and 26. Its population objective is 28,000 pronghorn. Over the last 5 years, we've seen it stay within that objective range, but this year we're seeing a little bit lower and dropped outside of the objective range. So we've had a couple of higher levels of winter mortality over the past few years and seen that population drop. We've reduced licenses in both hunt areas over the past few years as well to correlate with those drops in population. This year, our fawn ratio is 75 per 100 does, which is good. It should show some increase in our population. Our buck ratio is at 63 per 100, which is a good buck ratio. We've got lots of bucks on the landscape. Our harvest this year is down a bit. That correlates with the reduced licenses in the areas. Going off some of those numbers, our ratios are looking good. Our fawn numbers are looking good this year. So we are looking at increasing a little bit in area 25. We're going to increase 50 type 1 licenses to increase some buck harvest. Area 26, we're going the opposite direction. We're seeing lower numbers of bucks on the landscape and wanting to reduce that harvest a little bit. So we're dropping 100 licenses from that quota. The area 26 type 6 doe fawn licenses, we had really low success on last year, and with trying to bring that population back up, we want to cut back quite a bit on those. So we'll still have a few available for some of our ag damage issues, but most of those licenses have disappeared. Moving on to the Black Thunder pronghorn herd, I'll be covering some changes in hunt area 9, 27, and 29. For more in-depth look at that herd unit, you can look at the Newcastle biologist presentation. We have just one change in hunt area 9. We're looking to increase 50 type 1 licenses. We cut out all the type 6 licenses because of low population last year. This year we're seeing an increased fawn ratio, which is a good sign, and our buck ratio is staying stable. On area 27, we're not looking into any changes this year. We're going to maintain our quotas and season dates from 2023. We're seeing a little higher fawn ratio than we have over the last several years, but our buck ratio is lower than average. So we're going to keep the harvest at a lower level to look at increasing some population numbers in that area. On area 29, our fawn ratio is a little lower than what we'd like to see. Our buck ratio really dropped this year. However, our hunter success and hunter satisfaction last year was still pretty high for the area. So we are planning on keeping this the same as it was in 2023. There won't be any changes in hunter area 29. Next, we'll talk about medicine bow pronghorn herd. I'll just be covering hunt area 30. If you're interested in any of the other hunt areas in that herd, you can look at the later me season presentation. The late winter storm a few years ago, it hit hunt area 30 pretty hard. We reduced licenses quite a bit. Our population has been increasing since then. We looked at some fairly high hunter success last year. However, our days of harvest was quite a bit higher than average. It tells me that hunters were having a harder time finding antelope than they had been in the past. Looking at our fawn ratios and buck ratios, they're both way lower than what we'd like to see. So we are going to maintain our quotas and keep everything the same in hunt area 30 this year. Next up is the Dwyer pronghorn herd unit. For this herd and the following herd, if you're looking for more information, you can also look at the Wheatland biologist presentation. Hunt area 103, we are looking at a little bit of a change. We're reducing the type 6 licenses by 25. This hunt area has been struggling a bit. It is within the population objective, but has had very poor fawn survival, and buck ratio has been low but stayed stable. It's just not really thriving. So we are looking to cut back on the type 6 doe fawn harvest. The last pronghorn herd that I'm going to cover is hunt area 11, which is in the Meadowdale pronghorn herd unit. Hunt area 11 south of Lusk, the type 1 licenses are going to be kept the same. The type 6 licenses, however, we will see a little bit longer season for those. However, we are going to cut the license numbers in half. So we'll only have 50 doe fawn licenses in that area. Most of those licenses are used to address damage issues, which a lot of them come later in the fall and early winter. So this will allow a little more opportunity to address that. The overall population in this area has had pretty poor fawn survival and low buck ratios overall. Moving on to deer, we'll start with the North Converse deer herd. The North Converse deer herd consists of area 22. It's a really pretty good sized hunt area. We've seen population, we've had near objective over the last several years. Some changes in modeling and how we've done our surveys have given us a little better population estimates, and we're showing quite a bit lower numbers than we originally thought. The area right here this year, we've got a pretty low fawn survival rate and then lower than average buck ratio. A lot of that's probably due to the last winter. We saw some increased mortality. We are going to look at some season changes in that area. I'll go over the next slide. With a big hunt area like this, we do see some different deer densities in different locations. The eastern side of the hunt area has some higher densities of mule deer than the western half of the hunt area. So one thing we are doing to address that and move some of that pressure to the east, we are reducing the type 1 licenses to 150 from the 400 that it was previously. That license will still be valid for the whole hunt area. Then we're adding a type 2 license that will be the same season dates, but it will be restricted to only south and east of Wyoming Highway 95 and the Ross Road. So we'll have 250 licenses that are good in that type 2 license. And the overall quota will still stay at 400. So we aren't increasing licenses at all, just going to shift that pressure to the east. Moving just to the south, the next area we'll talk about is the South Converse deer herd, which is hunt area 65. This herd has been struggling for quite a few years. It's well below our population objective of 12,000 deer. We're estimating just under 4,000 right now. The herd's seen chronic low fawn survival, lower than we'd like to see for a lot of years. We're just not getting recruitment back into the herd. We do have a fairly high CWD prevalence in that area. Our buck ratio is stable. It's usually right at 40 bucks per 100 does. This year we're at 30. That's likely due to our classification sample size. We had classified a pretty small number of deer compared to what we were shooting for. Our success rates in harvest was a little bit lower last year. This year we're not looking at any changes. We're going to keep the 10-day season in place for Area 65. It falls in the Region J non-resident general deer hunt area. That quota is going to also stay the same at 750 licenses for non-resident Region J. Moving east a little bit, we're going to look at the Cheyenne River deer herd next. I'll cover a few of these areas, but if you're looking at any of the farther north areas and want more info on this, the Newcastle biologist presentation will cover that a little more in depth. Next couple slides will cover the southern half of Region B, the hunt areas 10, 12, 13, and 14. Starting with one of the two limited quota hunt areas in Cheyenne River mule deer herd, area 10, we are going to see a cutback in type 1 licenses from 100 down to 75. We had a really good fawn ratio this last year with the good moisture we had. Our buck ratio is 37 per 100, which is still pretty good. It's lower than average in that area. And we've definitely lost some of our bigger bucks in the area over the last couple of years. So we're reducing some licenses to address that lower buck ratio. As with hunt area 10, this area is below objective. Our fawn ratio is looking pretty good this year at 65 per 100. Our buck ratio is lower than average in this area. Our overall population is definitely way down. This is a general hunt area. Areas 12, 13, and 14 are all managed the same. All those season dates will stay the same for 2024. The Region B non-resident quota, we are looking at a reduction from 1,000 down to 800 for the non-resident Region B mule deer quota. Moving south, we'll talk about the Goshen Rim deer herd next. For more info on this deer herd, you can look at the Wheatland biologist presentation. As with the Cheyenne River herd, this population is under objective as well. We saw some pretty good fawn ratios this year, but the past several years have been pretty low. The buck ratio stays pretty steady at 30 in this area. The only change that we're looking at for area 15 is the type 6 licenses are going to be reduced from 250 down to 150 for doe or fawn. These licenses also are now valid on private land only, whereas they used to be area wide. Along with that, the Region T quota is valid in hunt area 15 for non-residents. That will be maintained at 400 licenses for non-residents. There's no changes proposed for whitetail deer in hunt area 15. The last deer herd we'll look at is the central whitetail deer herd. The whitetail deer herd units cover quite a bit more area than most of the mule deer herd units. This one, I'll just go over some of the changes for this year. Hunt area 8, the quota on type 3 licenses increased from 25 to 50. We also added a type 8 license with 50 doe fawn whitetail deer. The other change in the Douglas area is hunt area 22. We reduced the type 3 licenses from 100 down to 75 and reduced the type 8 licenses from 150 down to 100. Also, south of Douglas, Area 65, we reduced the type 8 licenses from 700 down to 600. Moving on to elk, the first one we'll look at is the Laramie Peak Muddy Mountain elk herd. Laramie Peak Muddy Mountain elk hunt areas cover areas 7 and 19. Our population objective is 5,000 in this area. We're estimating a little over 12,000 elk in the area right now. We've been consistently well over objective for a lot of years. Our population has stayed fairly steady with a slight downward trajectory in recent years. Our harvest is very weather and access dependent in these areas. I'll go over the Hunt Area 7 season changes. For any Hunt Area 19 information, you can look up the Casper biologist presentation. Areas 7 and 19 have consistently shown some high bull ratios. Our calf ratio in this herd unit is 31, which is a bit lower than average. Our harvest this past year was higher than average, so we did get some increased harvest this last year. Laramie Peak elk Hunt Area 7, we're looking at some pretty big changes, as you can see with all the red in our chart. The type 1 and type 2 bull tags, those are going to stay the same for 2024. There won't be any changes there. We'll see all the changes in our cow and antlerless tags. The Area 7 type 4 license, the early season is going to be removed. There will not be that early August, September, early October season for type 4s or type 6s. The type 4s will be open October 15th on. That quota is going to drop from 1,200 down to 800 for antlerless elk. The type 6s, that quota is going to drop from 2,250 down to 1,000 for a cow calf. The type 7 license is valid in January only. That season is going to be removed. Along with those, we're proposing a new type 8 license that will be open August 15th to October 14th. There'll be unlimited licenses for that. It'll be valid on private land in Albany and Carbon counties, valid in all of Platte County, and not valid in Converse or Natrona counties. That license, starting October 15th, will be valid anywhere in the area off National Forest through the end of December. So that's a new license type that we're putting in a lot of different hunt areas this year to address overpopulation of elk. So we just went over several new changes for the 2024 season proposals. We are looking at some potential big changes for 2025 as well that we wanted to put out and get some opinion on as well. The big changes will be the bull licenses for Area 7. We're looking to keep the Type 1 and the Type 2 licenses, but change those season dates and the limitations. Essentially, the Type 1 license would be open the month of October. The Type 2 license would be open the month of November. Both of those would be any elk licenses, not the 5-point or less restriction on the Type 2 like we currently have. After November, those licenses would turn into an antlerless elk license for the month of December for any that are not filled. We're looking to eliminate the Type 4 license in 2025, and we'll just have the Type 6 and the Type 8 cow licenses. The Type 6 license would be a cow or calf valid in the entire area. The Type 8 license would be valid on private land or in the early season in Albany and Carbon counties, all of Platte County, and not valid in Converse or Natrona counties. The Type 8 during the regular season from October 1st to December 31st would be a cow or calf valid off National Forest. So it would be valid anywhere in the hunt area except for on the National Forest. If you want to hunt the National Forest with that, you would have to have the Type 6 cow or calf tag. Moving north, we'll talk about the Pine Ridge elk herd on Area 122. Elk hunt Area 122 is predominantly private land where these elk are at. The population's managed on a landowner and hunter satisfaction objective currently. We are looking to go to a population objective in the next year. don't have a current estimated population, but we are seeing an increase in population in this hunt area. We're trying to stay on top of that and keep that population growing. The type 1 licenses this year, we're planning to keep the same. However, the type 2 license we are looking at adding would be valid from October 15th to November 30th. That have 100 licenses available for antlered elk, 5 points or less on either antler. So we can try to increase some of that bull harvest and get our bull ratios down. The 122 type 6 licenses we're looking to reduce from 350 down to 150 for cow calf. That will go with the 122 type 8 license that we're proposing to implement, which will be August 1st to January 31st. Those will be unlimited for cow or calf valid on private land. This will allow a little more flexibility on getting some cow harvest throughout the area and limit the pressure on some of the public land. We'll then move over east to the Rochelle Hills elk herd. For more information on the Rochelle Hills elk herd, you can look at the Gillette biologist presentation. I'll just be covering elk hunt area 113 right now. The type 1 license we close every other year generally. This year it will be closed. We'll just have a type 3 license with a quota of 150. This is valid for spike or antlerless elk. Next, we'll move over to area 126, which is considered a non-herd unit, meaning we don't manage for elk in this area. So there's a lot of red on this chart. It looks like a lot of changes, but most of this is just moving wording to the limited quota areas that it affects. So the only real changes with the general license in 126 will be that third line. We'll extend the antlerless elk season from November 30th through the end of December now. The type 6 license is going to be removed for 2024 and replaced with the unlimited type 8 licenses. For the early season in the type 8, the August 15th to September 30th, those will be cow or calf valid on private land in most of the area. Also valid in that portion of area 117 south of US Highway 16. So come October 1st, when the normal season opens, that'll be valid in the entire area through the end of January. So these type 8 licenses are unlimited. That way we don't sell out and can address some of the overpopulation of elk in specific areas in this herd unit. Moving south, the last herd unit I'll go over is the rawhide elk herd south of Lusk. So the rawhide elk hunt area 3, I'll go over some of the changes in this year's season proposal. For a little more info on that herd unit, you can look at the Wheatland biologist presentation. The big change in the general season for this area is the bull season will now go from September 15th through November 30th, where it used to close October 14th. And now the antlerless elk will be valid just the month of December and January. The type 6 licenses will be removed for 2024. There will be no type 6 licenses. As with some of the other areas, they'll be replaced with type 8 licenses. So those will be unlimited in number. The season dates will go from August 15th to January 31st for cow or calf. This is a very private land dominated hunt area, and this just gives us flexibility and landowners flexibility to address elk issues where we have them. So that was the last herd unit that I'll talk about, but we have a new change this year with non-resident general elk regions. So I'll go over a little bit of the eastern region in the next slide. So big change in non-resident general elk licenses this year. Rather than a statewide general elk license, non-residents now have 3 specific regions to apply for. There's an east region, south, and west. There's separate license quotas for each region, and just like the deer regions, you can only hunt the general license areas in that region. You cannot hunt any of the limited quota areas in the region. So I'll be covering Region E, which is basically generally everything east of I-25. It includes elk hunt areas 2, 3, 4, 116, 126, and 129. That Region E quota this year is set at 600. So if you're applying for non-resident general elk, you can apply for a Region E license, which would allow you to hunt any of those hunt areas. The last species I'm going to cover in my presentation is wild turkey. We're looking at a pretty big change for 2024 that we want to make everyone aware of. So for this fall, we're looking to make a big change in wild turkey. We're looking to combine all 5 of the hunt areas in the state into one single statewide area. It would be a limited either sex fall hunt. We'd have the single hunt area 1 general license would be valid from September 1 to September 30 for archery only, October 1 to December 31 for any wild turkey. This would keep the type 3 licenses that we use for population control. They would be valid by county. So there's a quota of 750 of the type 3 licenses. Those are valid. With that license, you can hunt anywhere in Converse, Natrona, Campbell, Johnson, or Sheridan counties. And those are the same as the general. There's an archery only section of it from September 1st through the 30th, and then from October 1st through December 31, it's any weapon. So that'll be similar to what we already have now, but you won't be limited to one county. You can hunt any of those counties with that type 3 license. The 2025 spring turkey proposal follows suit with the fall proposal with the one statewide hunt area. This will emphasize spring gobbler hunting with a general license valid from April 20th to May 31st for any wild turkey with a visible beard or male wild turkey. We also have the type 3 licenses similar to the fall where they'll be valid by county. From April 1st to April 19th, they'll be valid in Natrona, Campbell, Johnson, and Sheridan counties. Starting April 20th, they'll be valid in those counties as well as Converse County. As I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, we'd like to see public comments on any of our season proposals, whether you like them or don't like them. We want to hear either way. So comments, reminding everyone, they must be received by 5 p.m. March 29th, or they will not be looked at by our commission. You can put in your comments a couple different ways. Standard mail, you can mail them to our Casper office. The address is listed here on the presentation. Forms can be printed from the link on the right side. So you can go to that link, you can print off forms, mail them in, or you can also submit them online through that link as well. That brings me to the end of my presentation for the Douglas and Lusk areas. If you have any comments that you'd like to share with us and the commissioners, please submit your public comments by the 29th. If you have any specific questions on any of these proposals, feel free to contact me at the number on the slide. I appreciate you following along.